So if you ask people in the industry which brand do they recommend, the response you're most likely going to get is that it's not about the brand, it's about the quality of installation. And that's correct. So the challenge is that nobody really tells you what does a quality installation look like and what are the points that add up to a quality installation. So as with all my other videos, the idea is not to get too technical, but it's going to give you an overview of what are some of those small points that add up to a good installation. And you need to relate that back to how real is it that the company that you're hiring can pull all of that off. And I'm going to give you some tips on that. One of the key things that's going to culminate in a high quality installation for your system is actually the quality of the company's administration. So although there may be a field supervisor, he's not necessarily going to be there looking over the shoulders of the installers to make sure they follow all of these quality steps. Nor is it expected from you as the customer to be looking over their shoulders and making sure they do all of these things. So again, what is it that will ensure that all of these steps are in fact taken? So the first important step is good quality administration. And what do I mean by that? Did your sales rep take lots of pictures? Did he have some kind of customer service software where these things could be uploaded? Does that enable the company to have service techs review the work, the project before they arrive? Was the bidding process clear? Was there a clear indication of exactly what was going to get installed? All of those things are really important. The fact is that you want to have a crew arrive at your house who are calm, who know that they have everything on the truck that they need for that installation, and who are well briefed on what they're walking into. So how well organized the sales process was is definitely an indication of the ability for that to transfer to the guys who's going to do the work. Anyway, let's dive in and go through these pictures and I'll talk you through them. So it all starts with guys that are well equipped, that have vehicles that can carry everything they need and are certainly stocked up with all the materials they will require for the job. In this case, the company has a warehouse full of stock, and that really empowers us to do next day installations very easily. So here the guys arrived, and the first thing they're doing is putting down some flooring protection. This is a before picture, and here's the after. What you can see here is this kind of a muddy mess. That's because the drain line was situated right next to the house. You'll see another picture of it here later. And that wasn't up to code. Code says that this drain line needs to be 4 feet away from the house, so that was corrected here. All right, so here's a before and an after. So I'll go back to the before, and what you can see here, the pan has this drain line, which basically meant that if that pan had to overflow, the water would drain out to the side of the house. And it may actually drip out somewhere where the homeowner doesn't even know it's dripping. There were no safety switches in this pan that would detect that there's water. And the reason there would be water is if this condensate line gets clogged up for some reason, then the condensate would flow over and end up in that pan, and in this case just drain to the outside. So this could be going on for quite a while and the homeowner wouldn't even know it. So new code looks like this. In this case you have a safety switch at the top, which is situated at the bottom of the coil, and there's a little float switch in it, and if water should get in there because it's not draining out, then it will shut down the system. If that switch should fail for some reason and the water ends up in the pan, there's another switch that you can see in the pan here that will also shut down the system. So two methods of creating that safety. Obviously, if you have this in an attic space, you don't want to run the risk of that pan flooding over and damaging your ceiling. So here he's starting to take the equipment apart. So there the furnace is on its way out, being lifted down the stairs. And one of the things that you'll see a salesperson do is measure the opening of the staircase so that they know the equipment will fit through. In some cases, you may have to break the equipment down because it won't fit through there. And then there are other options for getting the new equipment in. Either it's a smaller width, or it would have to be taken apart in some cases before it gets up and then reassembled. Or the staircase can come down and it would have to be reattached afterwards. Now in that case, the trim work that goes around the top will typically be reinstalled by a specialist that would come in after the crew. Here the old equipment is on its way out and the new equipment is being unloaded. So just look at all the equipment on the back of this truck, right? There's lots of things that are used in the course of an installation. If you have somebody who's kind of a weekend warrior who comes in with this stuff on the back of his pickup, he's not likely to have everything with him to pull off a really high quality installation. So he's starting to build a new plenum. He's taking the measurements, you can see the pen in his hand, from the old plenum, transferring them to the new one. And the reason he's building another plenum is because there's an additional return duct that was installed and designed for the system. You can see how cramped the old plenum was. All right, so what's happening here is he's cutting the opening. The inflow into the furnace is either from the left or the right or the bottom. So that cut has to be done on site. And what you'll see is he's got his pen marks very clearly marked out where he's doing that cut. Now, I'll show you another picture here from a company I was with for a very short time when I first started in the industry. And if I zoom in here, you can see how this cut here was just kind of hacked out. The guy didn't have a pen with him. He didn't mark it out. So very sloppy, right? So small little things that add up to a good quality installation. These guys knew what they were doing. They had the marker there and they were going to make that cut exactly where it needs to be. And that's going to affect the future airflow of that system. So if you're off by a couple of inches, it's going to impact the amount of air that can flow through. Here it goes up, and there are no issues with fitting this unit through that door. All right, so here we have the furnace, and you'll see that the old pan is gone. So standard procedure here is to put a new pan in. What you see on the left-hand side here is the 5-inch filter from Lennox. That's a really well-engineered piece of equipment, and that's going to be attached to the side of this furnace here in a minute. All right, so there's the new pan, and he's putting vibration pads underneath the furnace. So he's getting ready to place the furnace, and see these little metal strips bent up, facing up like that? That's going to give you a nice tight connection between the furnace and the coil. Some manufacturers have those little tabs bending down, and I once saw a case where those were never actually bent up, so again it restricted the airflow. Another small thing that's going to affect the performance of the unit for many years to come. So here he's sliding the unit to fit in underneath the existing plenum, and as you can see it fits perfectly. So the equipment width is the exact same as what was there before. Now you may see situations where the old plenum is a little wider or narrower and those two things don't exactly match up. It's not uncommon, it happens. The question is, should you be replacing all of those plenums? That certainly adds quite a bit of expense to the project. So in this case, the existing supplied plenum was used, it's in great shape, and there was simply no reason to replace it. What he's doing there is he's spraying some extra glue before he puts his tape down. That glue will eventually become brittle. I have little shorts on my YouTube channel where you can see videos with wind, air just blowing out next to tape that became brittle after years. So that extra glue is just another one of those small things that add up to a good installation. So here he puts mastic around it. That's really going to lock in that connection. I would say in about 50% of homes I visit, that step was omitted. And very often I have, you see air blowing out where the tape became brittle, and now you have air leaking into the attic, which is not where you want it. So in this case, he peeled off that bottom piece of tape to get that nice straight edge. Certainly not something a customer is going to see, but it's a reflection of the pride he has in his work. So here the filter box is getting connected and it's getting drilled in to the furnace. In the meantime, this installer is wrapping up the plenum, and if you look carefully, he's got all of these connections drilled in. So again, lots of attention on making sure this thing does not leak, and it is insulated. So there it is connected, and you can see there's tape both on the inside and the outside, so there's a really tight connection to that filter box. Alright, in the meantime, this guy is starting to work on removing the old equipment. There it's coming out. He's got his pickaxe with him, And here you can really see how much damage was occurring with this drain line being right there next to the house. This line should have been diverted out here. So he's got his pickaxe with him. He's leveling the pad both ways. And here you have a perfectly level condenser. Why is that important? That fan blade is just going to spin around without doing this, and obviously have an impact on the life of that fan motor for years to come. All right, so here he's connecting the copper lines to the existing line set that you can see there. The question that gets asked sometimes is, what if there's a leak in the existing line set? And obviously that's tested for. The gas, or the freon, if we want to use that word, is actually preloaded in the condenser. And there's these little taps that open it. So those don't get opened until we have tested this line set. The line set also gets flushed. It gets cleaned out of any of the oils that was left from the old refrigerant. So this is a perfectly clean, flushed line set that we then connect the new copper lines to. So what he's doing here is he's brazing that line. Brazing is different from soldering, as you would see with usual plumbing, in that that bar there is a silver bar. It's not lead. And it's done at a super high temperature. It actually fuses the metals together. The shear strength on this is really high. And there's no risk of any acids that you would get with normal residential plumbing that will get into that line set and it can damage the equipment. I do have, for a laugh, a YouTube video that I found where somebody had to come back after a job was done where this was done with residential plumbing. And you'll see in this video, the guy spends the whole day melting it out, cleaning it out. The warranty on the equipment is gone, but he's doing his best to try and save this installation.
All right. Which one of you moonshiners been doing HVAC around these parts?
So this is definitely the sign of a professional. I have found some online videos where people use a lower temperature method of doing this, which is apparently approved for air conditioning. However, this is the gold standard, and I have personally never observed a company doing anything else but brazing. So here he's prepping it upstairs to set up for a good connection. Here he's lighting the flame, and then you can see the little blue flame, super high temperature, that's used to do the brazing on the inside also. So here's a great example of these guys working together as a super well organized team. It's hot, they're drinking a lot of water, but as the one guy is doing one task, the other one is on to the next task, which in this case involves connecting the ductwork to the plenum. So a good connection here involves putting the strap around it. They then have the special tool to tighten the strap. They then put mastic around that. I didn't get a picture of that, but they put mastic around that step, and then they pull the insulation tight, and then they put mastic around that also. Really critical. The number of times I've gotten into an attic where these things are pulled off and there's cold air blowing out are really quite numerous. All right, so we're back outside, and this is a vacuum pump. So what's going on here is they pull a vacuum, they go down to minus 500 microns, they pull that vacuum, and then they wait for at least 30 minutes, sometimes longer depending on the length of the line set, and they make sure that it holds pressure. And that's how they determine that there is no leak on the line before the new refrigerant gets released into those lines. In the meantime, these guys are wrapping up the electrical. He's putting zip ties on his work. Then he puts a panel over that. There's nobody there checking to see that he's using zip ties, but he arrived with the truck where everything he needed was there. And that's the type of thing that enables him to do a superb job. This is the Wi-Fi box for the remote thermostat. Here he's starting to do the work for the condensate drain line to the outside. Everything's glued on nice and tight. And there the line is, draining lots of water out of that house within minutes of it being turned on. This is the safety switch, so that's a float switch. If that condensate drain line should become clogged, then there's a little float inside that switch that will shut down the system. And then more about this opening that you see here. In older days, there was usually a rubber grommet in there. Well, those grommets would invariably get burned out when you do the brazing because this pipe gets so hot. So the better practice now is for manufacturers to leave that gap. It's very critical that it gets sealed well. You'll see that later. So here he's putting mastic on all the connections. There the flue is being connected to the furnace. And there we are, almost done. There's the new filter. This is the MERV 11 from Lennox sliding in. Very, very easy to put that filter in. And you can see these little white clips there and there on the front. And this thing just pops right on the front. Super easy. It's never going to fall off. And easy to open. And here's that step where he's now sealing up everything. If you don't seal that up, you're going to be blowing cold air out into the attic. And that's the connection at the bottom. So the system has been turned on and he's starting to check the various pressures. Those pressures are written on a panel that's around the corner as part of the equipment. So it's very easy for technicians to be able to look and see exactly what those need to be. And depending on what they're getting, they may have to add some additional refrigerant, which is what he's got there in the pink bottle. So now cleanup starts, and once again you can see why you need that big truck. So here he starts setting up the thermostat. This is the Lennox product for a full variable speed communicating system. There's actually a dealer ID that gets entered. There are various setups that can be done by the installers at this point. And there it is, connected to the internet. And there it is, temperature on display. Final checks outside to make sure everything is in range. So final pictures. In this case, they required a new thermostat line. That was the Lennox S30. The new thermostats no longer require it. They can run on a line with 4 wires in it. And there they are, a team that is as happy at the end of the day as they were in the morning when they arrived. So there we are. I hope it helps. The next time somebody says it's all about the installation, you will certainly have some concept of the fact that yes, there are lots of small little things that add up to getting a good installation. So look out for those indicators that I mentioned in the beginning of this video, so you can choose a company you can trust to deliver a great installation. It's going to impact the efficiency of the equipment, and it's certainly going to impact the life of the equipment, the longevity of the equipment. I see units that last for 10 years and the same equipment, the same model year, came out of the same factory that lasts for 25 years. So what's the difference here? It all goes back to that quality of installation. Thank you for watching, and if you're looking for an online quote for a completely installed system, please look out for the link below.